Dun, dun, dun. We're back to Quantum Exchange. And we have a wonderful guest today. He's in my left. That pretty lady. Who is she? I don't know. But present yourself. Who are you, Antonia? Let us know, please.
Oh, well, I'm a counselor. I'm a women's health coach. And I'm a circle facilitator and family constellations facilitator. So it's got me. Yeah.
And then where are you located?
So I'm located just about an hour and a half north of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia.
Oh, Australia.
Yeah, beautiful Sunshine Coast. It's one of the most gorgeous spots in the world. Not that I'm a little bit, just a little bit. But yeah, it's really, really beautiful. Lots of nature, lots of green, and I spend lots of time outside, which is wonderful.
We're so lucky to have you, and thanks for working with our time difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And of
We
course,
got it.
yes, we did it. But the main reason why we wanted you to come into this podcast is because I don't know anything about family constellations, and I'm really dying to understand what this is all about, the process.
Yeah.
I know JJ just had a family constellation
Yeah,
therapy,
like 2
right?
weeks ago.
But he didn't tell me anything. Like, I
No,
can't talk.
because the therapist told me that if I tell something, the energies are going to be affected. So I better like keep silence like for 20 days. He recommended it.
Yes.
So I'm doing that. Sorry, audience. Sorry, Sandra.
Yeah, and that's
suspense.
part of it for sure. I mean, family constellations is probably it's a very experiential modality. So what that means is that to really understand it, I always tell people just go to a workshop. I'm happy, so I'll explain to you a little bit about the background, like what it is, and would that be helpful if I?
Yes,
sure.
And then does it always have to be in presence, or can you do it online too?
You can definitely do it online, and so there's a couple of ways you can work with it. So one, which is sort of how this started, is you essentially assemble a group of strangers, and you have one facilitator, sometimes two, but generally one, and then you work with that group of strangers with different issue holders, so different people are able to do a constellation. So, you might do a full day and there might be 4 or 5 people who get to do a piece of work. That's okay. And then the other way is that you do it one-on-one. So you use figurines. So instead of using the people as representatives, and I'll go into representation in a second, you use figurines. And sometimes that can be really good for people that find groups really intimidating, or if it's something that's really close to their heart or very traumatic. I definitely, so I have a mental health background, and when I do it, sometimes these are things that people aren't ready to share with, 10 people, 20 other people. And happy to be in this sort of more contained space. Yeah.
Definitely.
Very cool.
What are figurines?
Yeah, exactly. What do you mean by figurines? Like little dolls?
Yeah. So it can be anything, like if you are, if you do this regularly, which I don't have them with me right now because I have them out on loan, but but you can. But essentially, what I use is little, like, they're about this big, little wooden figurines, and they're all different shapes, and so
like 20 centimeters tall, for example, for the people that aren't just audio.
Yeah, and I could do a constellation with someone with like my lip gloss and like a pen and a glass.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah, so it's like whatever you have available. Like I've done one once with tissue papers. That's all we had, and that's how we worked.
Amazing.
Yeah, and some people use crystals. Like, it's just to be able for the person to pick something outside of themselves to represent whatever we're working with. So family members, or
so family members, but also issues too.
So how that representation, what is that first?
Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll start with what it started with and sort of what it's evolved into, because what it started with a lot narrower, and we're sort of, the modality is already a few decades old, and it's really growing in the way that people are using it. And like the way that I use it is very broad. Like it's not just looking at family systems, you know. So it started originally with a guy called Bert Hellinger. He actually 3 days ago was the 3-year anniversary of his passing. And he's sort of the father of this modality, and he was a missionary, and he spent 17 years with the Zulu people in Africa, getting to know them, seeing their tribes and seeing how they healed together in community, like what their rituals were, how they did it. And then he actually qualified as a psychotherapist when he came back home to Germany. And then started working in these sort of, you know, it was a pretty prolific time, like the 70s. It was like they were developing heaps and heaps of different modalities. And he sort of really dived in there and developed this modality essentially from scratch. And how they were working is very much in these groups, like getting together groups of strangers, people that didn't know each other. And then they would get people to step into representation for family members in the system they were working with. So, you know, if I was working with someone and their family of origin, for example, was, you know, their mum, their dad, and 3 siblings, you would ask them to pick a representative for their mum, for their dad, and then for the 3 siblings, including themselves. Generally, you watch to begin with, at least. You don't step straight into the constellation. But again, this is changing now. So this is how it used to be. This is the classical sort of approach. And then what they would do is they would get the issue holder, is what we call the person that we're working with. They would get them to position the people in like a space. So imagine everyone sitting in a big sort of circle, and in the middle you have these, say, 5 representatives, and they step behind them, put their hands on their back, and then they move them as their body guides them into the space. And what you end up with is that you have this picture of what the family system looks like in their head and in their body, you know, like maybe all the 3 children are facing one way and mum and dad are all the way in the corner, you know, facing out the other way. And that alone.
Who moves them?
The person that is doing the piece of work. So the person whose family it is.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. And that alone can give you lots of info, you know?
Yeah. So the person positions the family members, and then depending on where they're facing and where they are in relation to the client, then we can figure out and develop some hypothesis, I guess, or something like that. Like
yes.
Okay.
And I think that is not necessarily in relationship to the client, because the client is also represented by some person over there, right? So it's in relationship with each other. The client is a third person observer.
That's right. So the client positions the people, but including themselves, like including a representative for themselves. Yeah, and it's a really good way to start, because often, you know, especially when we come to family issues, you know, we tend to be really like, oh, it's always been like this, and, you know, I don't know, my mum never loved me, or my dad was never available, and like we get caught in our stories, and and it's our lens, you know, through which we see the world. And then when we use a representative that's not us, often we can get a new perspective, we can get a new information that we couldn't have gotten if we had stepped straight into it. And that's, you know, that's the beauty of this work. And as far as the representation goes, so have you ever heard of the word resonance?
But what is it?
Okay, so you might be familiar with like the heart torus, for example. You know, like your heart emits a certain frequency, and it's sort of around you. It's almost like it's an electromagnetic frequency.
Okay, that name was heart what? Heart torus?
Torus. So it's Torus, torus.
I didn't hear that word before. Toius. Okay.
Yeah, Taurus. Yeah.
New word.
New word.
New word unlocked. Oh yeah. What's the meaning of it?
So it is essentially this sort of almost like a figure of 8 that we know that the heart generates. It's like electromagnetic frequency that
I've seen it
radiates.
in a picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to
It's
say
like the electromagnetic field making
Yes.
an 8. Like
that's
you
right.
see it.
And it actually, yeah, that's exactly right. And it goes outside of our body quite a fair bit.
Yeah, it's like the aura, or it's not the same.
Well, look, probably, yeah, like there's obviously an overlap there, but we know we can definitely measure the torus, like we know it's there. And we also know that when we step into contact with someone else, so if I'm standing next to someone, our toruses start intermingling, and that's why sometimes you get this feeling like, I don't really like this person, or yeah, like this is someone I really like, and it's because your toruses are interacting on some level.
Nice,
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, and it
quite
gives you this
amazing.
bodily sensation, right? Like often we have these really like bodily feelings of like, oh, I want to move towards that person or that group even, or maybe not for me,
Oh yeah.
And it's this resonance that we work with, because a family system also has a resonance.
Mhm.
The family system, because there's multiple people involved, so each person has their own resonance, and then the family system as a whole has a resonance.
Wow.
Like a fractal.
Yeah. And so when we get people to step into a representation, so say the mother of that family system, what we're doing is we're not acting, we're not role playing, we're asking that person to step into resonance with the mother of that system.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then what we do is we generally work with like bodily sensations or feelings that arise for that person. And often, they come out of nowhere. They're like, oh, I don't want to look at the father, or oh, I love my youngest child, or whatever comes up for them. And it'll be, they won't necessarily even know anything about that family system.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know who they are. Like you can do it completely blind where no one knows in the family system who they are. Wow. And you set it up, like you talk to the client beforehand, and then you pick the representatives, and then you set it up, and like none of the representatives know any of the story. They don't even know who they are. And
that's
it's
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm.
And how long is a session, is a constellation? And why is it called constellation?
So it's a little bit of a mistranslation, the constellation. So it's probably so in German it's Familienaufstellung. So it's more about the placement of the family, like where are people positioned in relation to each other. And that's that's very difficult. There's no word really for it in English, right? So I think that's where constellation came from, because it sort of captures that. Yeah, but that's what that is.
If you see it with your eyes closed, like this, maybe looks like a constellation.
yeah, for sure.
Okay. And then how long does one of these things can last?
Oh gosh, it really depends. I think anywhere between half an hour to 2 hours. I think my average is between an hour to an hour and a half.
Okay.
But it really depends on the issue, because if you're bringing up a really complex family system with a really lots of different representatives and all that kind of stuff, it can take a bit longer. Whereas if someone is really clear and is like, so for example, this is how you can use it in a more abstract way. Someone is like, I have a decision to make. It's like option A or option B, and they can actually put up representatives or even pieces of paper with option A and option B, and we do it blind. And then they step into the resonance for that. And then they feel in their body, how does this feel? And it's not often that it's like a yes and a no, but it does give them a lot of information. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, here in this one, my knees feel really weak and I feel sick in my stomach, and then they go to the other one and like, oh, wow, like it feels expansive, and then that gives you a really good idea for which way you might want to go.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened with the people that we reject? We discard them?
What do you mean? Can you clarify?
Okay, so if we are doing a family constellation and then there's the representative of all the family, and there is somebody there you just don't want to be around or something
Mhm.
because
Mm,
for whatever reason, can you just get rid of them out of your life?
Great question. Love it. Love it. Ooh. Maybe we should do a constellation on that. No,
it's like, can you take a piece out of the system and
No.
still have the system in balance or healthy?
So-
Let's say not in balance, but healthy.
so there are what we call the orders of love.
Okay.
And the orders of love is essentially when you're working with a family system, what you're looking for is where those orders are out of balance.
Okay.
Oh,
Orders?
Orders like rule, like think of rules. Like,
Okay.
so for example, one of them is everyone has an equal right to belong to the family system.
nice. I love that.
There's also the order of priority. So the person that is born first has priority in the family system, and then it like goes down like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So and we look at these things because what happens when these get muddled, like when these get mixed up, that's when we have dysfunction. So I'll take your example. So like there might be someone that in real life, for whatever reason, you do not want to speak to. You know, I don't know, they may have committed a crime, they may be just a really not a nice person to be around, whatever the reason. But what happens is if we exclude that person in the family system, they will find a way to be excluded be included in a later generation.
Oh.
So
The same energy.
and it just doesn't mean you have to be best friends with them in real life. That's not at all what this is about. It's more about how can we include this person as part of the system still? Because, you know, what you see, for example, a lot is when people have murdered or when there's been a criminal and they've been like rejected by the family and like cut off, no one talks to them, no one, you know, the next generation, you often will have at least one criminal that does the same thing.
Because, wow, because you didn't incorporate it into the family.
So
Yes,
how incorporating that person looks like, because it's confusing.
Yeah, it is. This is where it becomes a very experiential modality, because what you do is you connect perhaps in the constellation with the part of the person that is healed or with their soul, you know, like you don't necessarily even need to connect with their traumatized part at all. But there's also a chance that the person, the way that they're acting, right, that they are already holding intergenerational stuff. So they might be acting that way because they are including things from a previous generation, you know? So we look at that kind of thing as well, where it's like, where does the responsibility actually lie? And I've seen it many, many times that when you start including someone in the family, even if it's just in a constellation, they start acting differently in real life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy. It's like, and you know, they don't have to be there for this, you know, this is all sort of more energetic work that works in the like we know called the morphogenetic field. So these like
what that means?
Morphogenetic field, it's a scientific theory that we don't really fully understand. Yes, it's all about this resonance. So, you know, say you do this constellation, you include this person that you normally have been excluding, right? You are altering the resonance of the family system in relation to this excluded person. And that alone sometimes is enough for them to start acting differently because it changes their resonance.
Yeah, I get it. It's like the electromagnetic field, in a way to think it, of the whole family, that when you include that person, it changes the energy of the family no matter where they are located physically. It's something that goes beyond space and time in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you can definitely can even work with past families, so people that have passed or that are dead. What you're missing, like you include them too, like you just, there's no they don't have to be alive to be in that constellation.
Oh, that's sweet. I have a question that
Yeah,
is,
go for it.
when you say that rule or orders of love, that the person that is born first has priority, right? I have like I'm improving, like integrating that idea,
Mhm.
but I've been having like an energy of rebelliousness against like my lineage. You know what I mean? So does that mean that you have to be like a sheep or to be subdued to the will of the people that are above you in the family?
Great question. Love this question. Because if you asked someone who was perhaps like first generation constellation facilitator, they might tell you yes.
All right. Interesting.
But in this like day and age, like I don't know any constellation facilitators that would say yes now. But just to give you that context, like that used to be sort of the thought. But what it more has evolved to mean now is it's about the order of things. So, for example, if you have, say, an older brother, and your parents weren't really available, and you took care of the younger siblings.
Yeah.
You might be in a position where, and your older brother did whatever, he went out and partied or what, he just wasn't available, he didn't help. You as a second born are in the wrong position. So you not only are parentified because your parents aren't available, but you also then it would normally fall to the older brother to do some of that.
Yeah.
And you sort of pushed into that role. So there's likely to be tension between you and the older brother, and you might find it really challenging to find your order in the world. Like you might find it really difficult to find your place.
Yeah, I feel that, by the way. You say that and I feel energy flowing through my body.
Yeah.
That's
huge.
So,
there's we call them healing sentences. And we use these a lot, and we get the representatives to talk to each other and say these healing sentences.
Yeah.
And so the move might be to get the younger brother to turn to the older brother and be like, I am the second born son and you are the firstborn son. And that is exactly the right place for us.
Okay.
So it's about, the healing sentences often are about speaking the facts and the truth of that family system that often hasn't ever been voiced.
Okay. And also to acknowledge that he's above and or the younger brother is below.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, correct. And there could also be, there could be a healing sentence about, you did not take the responsibility that was yours, and I return that to you now. So you could actually do returning of that. And then probably you'd have to return that to the parents because it was never the older brothers either. But, that's where
Okay, so you can return things back. And then what about if you feel like you don't belong in that family? Is that the same question?
Very, very common.
Yes, this is really beautiful.
Yeah, it's really common. And, often that is because we're not in the right spot.
What does that mean?
We've been parentified, for example. So, a really common dynamic is when a child has to be the parent because the parent is, for whatever reason, unavailable. Sometimes both parents unavailable. And that then leads to the child being like, hold on, this is like, these boots are way too big for me to fill. So I'm out, I'm not doing this anymore. And that generally comes maybe teenager, early adulthood, generally younger, it's fine. But yeah, so that's what happens. Sometimes that can also happen if there is miscarriages or stillbirths in the family that haven't been addressed. And then that child is born after that, and the parent, and the parent is still actually in deep grief. And so that child is born and is like, what on earth is going on? No one is no one wants me, or like I'm not the right child, or like there's all of that, which a child is just picking up subconsciously. And that's definitely something you can work with, because the whole family system breathes a lot easier when you bring in those deceased children. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very nice. I love it. This is so amazing. I feel touched. I don't know why. I want to cry.
Well, obviously you touch something in your system, in your
Yeah.
resonance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice, though. Very nice. I like it. I like that you can work on your family and they don't have to be there.
Yeah, that's a good thing, isn't it?
And then you can say whatever, right? You can express and do, but do the figurines speak back to you or no?
So there's all different ways that people work one-to-one. The way that I do it, because I work mostly online, is that I would have like it would be me and you, and then I have like a second screen. And the second screen, I have like a little setup of like a table with like up, down, left, right, and a whole bunch of figurines. And you pick them and you tell me how to position them. And then I step into resonance with them once they're positioned. So I touch them and I tune into my body, and then we work with what emerges from there.
Very cool.
Amazing.
And then how much does a session with you? And can you send us like link that we can share on our podcast? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I can send you a link. So session with me at the moment is $250 Australian.
Okay.
And that's for an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So but I have done before, if it is something like shorter, like as I was saying, if you want to explore your whole family system, we definitely need that. Sometimes we go to 2 hours, I don't charge extra for that. But if it is something smaller, like you just really want to make a decision or something like that, like I have reduced rates for that, because that's only going to take us like half an hour to an hour. So yeah.
It's very reasonable anyway. So
yeah. So and then when you come to one-on-one workshop with, or like a workshop with me, it's around $100 for the day. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but it's $100, but present. And
yeah.
Gosh, we got to fly to Australia.
Yeah. And how the workshop works? How the workshop works?
How does it work? Yeah, so essentially you sign up. I don't pick issue holders and representatives. Like some constellation facilities will have different prices. The reason I don't do that is because sometimes people are like, I definitely want to do a constellation, and then they get there on the day and they're not ready. But then they feel like they have to, because they've paid that extra money, like there's that sort of, it creates a weird sort of pressure for them.
Yeah.
And then sometimes people are like, oh no, I don't need to do a piece of work. And then they walk in, they're like, oh my God, like I need to do this piece of work. So charging the same across the board for me is about working with the field, with the energy, what is actually in the room, because that is, in my experience, how you can be of most service to people. Really, you're working with who's ready. And one thing I will also say is this, with this modality, if you go to a workshop and you don't do a piece of work, like as in you are not an issue holder, you are still going to get so much out of it.
Nice.
Because you are never in a representation that isn't also related to you.
Got it.
So yeah, so if you are in a father or mother or sibling or whatever, often there's quite a bit of overlap with your own resonance. Like you never get put into a position that has nothing to do with you. It's always related. So I've been doing this work since I was 15.
Wow.
And I didn't do my first constellation until I was 23. And I've been a representative all throughout those years.
Wow.
But I didn't feel called to actually do my own piece of work until I was 23. And I got so much healing from representing. That it was amazing. That's why this modality is, it's life-changing, because you can go to workshop, not even do your own piece of work, and you walk away with so many gems and insights and healing. Yeah.
That's very amazing. This is so cool. I didn't know anything about this. And then somebody said, oh, you should do a family constellation. And I'm like, what? And then I dug into it, and that's what, and then JJ say, I'm doing a family constellation.
Like
And I'm
that.
like, I want to know what that is too. I want it too. And
Yeah.
that's how we end up here. This is very interesting. And then, so what about for you when this, because we release all this energy, how
Mhm.
does that affect you? How do you protect yourself from the bad juju coming back to you?
Well, I mean, I generally do about a 24-hour prep. So I have my own ancestors with me very strongly at all times.
Nice.
You know, like I have my own lineage very strongly behind me. My teachers, you know, like they're all behind me, supporting me and protecting me. And I also, before I even start the workshop, right, I call in the healed ancestors. And, you know, that might be 7 generations back. Who knows? But I call in the healed ancestors of everyone that's going to be present.
Wow.
So that creates the space immediately, you know, like, so it's not just me doing this, you know, it's not just me holding this space. Like I'm just Antonia, you know, like I'm just a vessel essentially, you know, I'm just there to be of service for those family systems and for those ancestors that, you know, want to support their descendants to be healed.
Totally.
And yeah, and so that's, you know, and I do a lot of, you know, like I said, I have a mental health background, so I'll do a lot of, you know, grounding throughout the day, a lot of like letting go rituals after sort of heavier things. You know, often we go outside and we give things back to Mother Earth if there's like a lot of grief and things like that. You know, like, so we do a lot of grounding between pieces of work to really make sure people can integrate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Amazing. Let's restart the call and we keep a little bit of the conversation, okay? Because it's going to cut. Soon it's going to take us away. Okay.
Is
Go
that
back.
cool? We'll send you a new link.
Yeah. Can we send you a new link and we restart the call?
Sure.
Amazing.
No worries.
So we're back.
Thank you for cooperating. I send it to you.
Back in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. We're back. So, well, we were talking about the last thing. I think Sandra, you were about to say something, right?
Well, I want to know that. What about the people that we invite to do this constellation? Like, are they like willing participants? Like, where did you get these people?
Yeah,
absolutely. Or what? Or did you bring your own people?
So the way that it works for me is that I generally, you know, because it's not super well known in Australia, it's definitely picking up. But I put out a call, you know, have a really amazing community, and especially, so I actually do most of my workshops down in Byron Bay, which is about a 3-hour drive from here. Because there's a really big community there of people that love this work and that know the potency of this work. And then I put out a call, and then, you know, my workshops are anywhere between 10 to 15 people, because after that gets quite big. You know, the field sort of gets bigger with each person.
Of course. Wow.
Yeah. And if you go too small, the interesting thing is that the field is so overlapping, like there's so much in common with the people, that it's really, really exhausting, because like every piece of work you do is for everyone. And it's like, so you have to be really try and hit that sweet spot, which for me is like generally more than 7. So 10 is awesome, 15 is great. So and they are definitely willing participants. Yes, we don't just get people off the street and they have no idea.
Hey, what's up? Someone on the street, hey, what's up? You want to do something with me? Something you don't know how it works, but come on, let me show you.
Let's go. Yeah, right.
Something that I have noticed in my life path is the Australian people, a lot of women in my Facebook, a lot of healers, a lot of spiritual guidance, crystals. I love it. I adore it. And I can only imagine it's because the environment, right? The Australia being so mystic and full of earths and trees and animals. But I resonate so much with people from Australia. I have so many connections from Australia that
Let's
I'm
go to
thinking,
Australia.
I know exactly. That I have to go there one day because something is calling for me there for sure. But
Yeah.
but Antonia, are you German?
I'm German. Yeah.
Oh,
Originally.
wow. From where?
I'm from Berlin. I'm from Berlin.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I only
Yeah.
been to Frankfurt and then I went to this tiny little town called Una.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. But I loved it. It was nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
And why are you in Australia now?
Oh, well, I came when I was 15
Oh, okay.
on exchange, and then I just sort of never went home.
That's amazing. So
yeah.
brave.
Yeah, and I've wanted I'm very like I always sort of know where I'm going generally anyway. And yeah, I decided when I was 5 I was going to live in Australia. So
Really?
And why do you think that it was so intuitive for you to know your direction?
I don't know. I think there was I was really into animals, and I wanted to be a veterinarian, like working with animals. And the animals here are just super cool. Like I just remember my dad, I think, had been for holiday and he brought me back like a book, with all the different animals, and I was just like, that's where I want to live.
Nice.
And I don't know,
Nice.
like it stuck. So and I ended up being a veterinary nurse in Australia, so I got pretty close.
Oh, wow. That's so.
Yeah.
And then you shift into helping people.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Do you regret it?
Oh, absolutely not. No, that was definitely 100% the right shift. But the funny thing is that people think working with animals, like in the veterinary industry, is all about helping the animals. And it is to a degree, but really you're working with people all the time.
I know, it's terrible.
Yeah. So I was helping people a lot already. So I was like, oh, well, this is, just a small transition.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad that you have time for us today to come and enlighten us with your knowledge. And I want to have a session. I never done this. And I like to experience and experiment everything.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me here as well. I love having a chat about it. And even though it's a bit complex, like trying to sort of take the mystery out of it a little bit, because I think sometimes people hear family and they immediately go, oh no, I don't want to do that, but I'm like, you have to be there.
Yeah, that's true. That happens.
Would you recommend this to everybody? Like anybody could do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's worth people having a little bit of like insight and maybe having support ongoing. So for example, like one of the like coaching programs that I offer is like it's 6 sessions, and one of them is a family constellations. And one of the reasons I've done that is so people have continuity of care, because sometimes things come up for people and it takes a little bit to integrate. So I always recommend, if you do a family constellation session, that either have a follow-up counseling session, or just make sure that you have ongoing support in case something comes up that you want to unpack after the 20 days. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, this is amazing. So I like the fact that, so in reality, we should all be calling our ancestors like you do to protect us and to guide us. And that way we don't feel like maybe so alone, right? Sometimes, because I think the spirits will fulfill you. Is that right? Like, you feel them around you? Do you feel like somebody's next to you, being there, loving you, protecting you, all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like even the necklace, it's my grandmother's. So like I always have it with me. And she's passed, so she's passed over. But yeah, like I call on them, if I'm having a bad day or if I need help, or and the wonderful thing is, and this is what people don't realize, you don't have to even know the ancestor, like sometimes you can just be like, oh, I really need, some female energy, or I really need someone to protect me. And you just ask, you just throw it out there, and they're on the other side and they want to help, they really do. Like yeah.
Is it better to ask for ancestors that are healed, as you
for sure,
as you told me that you did in the therapy?
Yes. Yeah. The reason I do that is because sometimes that can bring up more things. So like sometimes it's really good to connect with an ancestor that needs healing. but also sometimes it can be not very supportive.
Yeah.
It can be very triggering for you. So it's, I generally recommend to people to ask for their healed ancestors, or if you want to connect with someone specifically, connect with their healed parts, because we all have them, we all have them. If it's your grandma and oh, well, she was a very traumatized woman, connect with her healed parts or her soul or her higher self, like whatever you want to call it, whatever resonates with you. You can connect to those parts, like they exist. Yeah.
Nice. I'm gonna try this tonight.
Yeah, I have if you look at my Instagram, I actually did a little reel on how to connect to your healed ancestors. So
okay, make sure we get all your info so that
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, share it and I'll have it in the video description so you can connect. Okay.
That's amazing.
So I think
that's
that is pretty good. Everything that we have talked, really amazing, really grateful. I mean,
it's mind-blowing,
this is huge.
really.
Mind-blowing, actually.
Because actually talking energetics, frequency, then what did you call that thing? The Taurus?
Yeah, Taurus, yeah.
That's amazing. Like, I don't ever get to talk to anybody about any of this. So I adore it. I'm so thankful for you, Antonia. Antonia, I'm gonna keep you very close to me.
Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful to be here and get a chance to chat to you both about this. Thank you so much. And thank you for your questions as well. You've asked some really awesome ones. So that was really awesome. Thank you so much.
And I'll ask Sandra to share your contact to me.
Is
that okay?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's it. Thanks for being part of our podcast, and we'll see you next episode.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Ciao. Thank you.